I don't like the N-word. I don't like hearing it, but sometimes it will come up, and as a documentarian, do you take it out, do you leave it in, you know, because it'll come up. And so, one of my low moments, we work as a team. Yeah, I have a team of people behind me. It's usually a small team. And the first Little Brother we did was in Camden, New Jersey, and that was an experiment. So I said, nobody's gonna expect us to find love in Camden, New Jersey. So those of you who have seen it know that the boys are adorable, and they're smart and brilliant and fantastic. On the way there, our crew was attacked. And so I was not with the crew because I was working that morning. I worked a morning show, and I was an hour and a half behind. And when they called and said we were with the police, it's because something wasn't done that I asked them to do. So we won't get into that. But a tough time that Kim's stories resonate with me is when you're a female boss and you've got grown men working with you, it can be tricky. And
Why so?
Yeah. Just saying, and he said it to me, I thought you were just playing it safe when you told us not to do this and that. And I'm like, am I the only one who grew up in a compromised neighborhood and knows how to walk? Clearly not, you know, I thought you guys walked the streets, you know, where you grew up and all that stuff. What is going on? You know, this is not how you handle a shoot. So we managed, a camera was destroyed. We had 2 cameras, we're now down to 1. There was $10,000 of damage in 2 minutes, and thank God nobody was shot, because that's what the man was prepared to do. And so, and again, I'm not there, this is all hearsay, and I'm furious. And so, somehow, the footage from the camera that was damaged was saved. And on it was the N-word, not from our crew, but from the guy who went after them. Why are you coming to our neighborhood? And I left it in. This film about little boys, I left it in. Why? Because they go through this every day. We went through it just as visitors. Look, this is a little, I was selfish. I was pissed at my crew, I left it in. You know what I mean? I'm the editor, and I'm just like, see what you did, and this is perfect, it shows, you know, and this is how you embarrassed us. But honestly, it did show what the boys went through. And it kind of, when I watch it with young people and their teachers and their parents, I'm like, oh, here it comes. But they kind of forget about it later because you hear it so often. So it also is a commentary on that, and people bring it up later. So that's a real situation, and I leave it in. Do I write it into scripts? No. And I know PhDs who refuse to use it when talking to our community, and I don't use it. So I feel indifferent about it. But if it's real and it comes up, you know, depends on the situation. But thank you for the question, because I think we should always be talking about it.
I agree. Brianna, do you have anything to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to what Nicole said. I mean, my first couple of films, I used it, but with Indelible, it's not indelible. With the last script that I wrote, the word is not in there. Because I kind of feel that, as a filmmaker, I have the opportunity to kind of, to change the narrative and to change the way that people relate to each other, especially Black folks. And so I actually try not to use it unless it's called for, because I just feel like it's I'm a old school hip hop guy, and it's like, a lot of those guys, they rhymed, they made their money, they told stories, and they didn't use the word. And so if I can write something and create something that people are really influenced by, and not use that, so that that we can diminish the use of that in the community, I think that's a good thing.
Just one minute. I think context is very important, as you mentioned. For my film, Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, I interviewed several rap artists about manhood and rap music and hip hop culture. And I made a decision at that time to allow them to be as organic and as authentic as possible, because I wanted the film to come across as being very real and authentic. And one thing that sort of struck me as the film was getting really close to broadcast is that PBS, and I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with the PBS system, but like PBS has this list of flaggable words, right? And one thing I thought was really interesting is that the N-word was not one of the flaggable words.
Oh.
That was really interesting.
Black History Month is
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I was very torn about that. I remember, I can bring myself back to the moment where I felt very torn about whether or not I should just go ahead and just bleep it myself, right? And I decided not to. But I think that all of us who are content creators, I think, should proceed with caution, because even though we may understand the context, and I know I do, I mean, I can tell when it's used appropriately or it may be used gratuitously and there's no real reason to use it. I always think that we have to be mindful of the history and the power of the word. I think that's really important. And I also think it's important that we understand how conservatives and the right, Republicans, use that against us any moment that they have an opportunity.
Right.
So whenever some white guy or white woman says something that's extremely racist or uses that word, all of a sudden you'll see Fox and MSNBC and CNN and other media outlets, who have pundits who say, well, Jay-Z uses the word 75 times in his open of one of his songs, right? And so if Jay-Z can use it, then what's so bad if, what's so wrong with so-and-so using it? And you have black people using the word, you need to deal with that issue.
Right.
So I just think that our media and our language can oftentimes be co-opted and used against us in ways that sort of buffers the bigger, larger issues of racism that exists in our culture.
Right.
So I think that we just have to be aware of it, and we also have to be able to, when we do use it, we have to be able to defend the use of it in a way that's intelligent, smart, and that combats any other sort of appropriation of the word that's not appropriate, that's not cool.
Right. And it's not just from outsiders outside of the community, it's also within our own community how we use the word. And it's not just young generation, it's the older generations as well that sometimes have that issue too. I think about my grandmother sometimes, and I love her to death. She'll use that word at the drop of the dime. And you kind of pull yourself back and be like, Anna? Right.
That's a character.
Exactly. Character.
And just to add to that a little bit, as a story writer, when you're trying to be true to your character and your character, like if I were writing about somebody like Nana, I struggle with it sometimes too, because it's like, do you want to take it out totally, or do you want to be true to that particular character? But I've learned now, because in one of my films, it was used, one of the actors was really doing a good scene, and but when I watched it later, it made me cringe. So I made a commitment from then on that I wasn't going to use it, and I would have to use my talent to make the story compelling enough that you don't really need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And